What's going on YouTube? Listen up, young elder gang. This is Dr. Joe Blow at You with Another Banger. Please make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video, fam. I hope this video get at least 100,000 likes. In this video, you will find history, definitions, scripture, information, and best of all, what we Americans have been deprived of from the beginning, the truth. Keep in mind, this content used in this video is intended for entertainment, educational, and informational purposes only. We will give you the total truth as we best understand it today. Be sure to hit that like button, young elder gang. Hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Hit that bell and don't forget to check back with us every day for new content. Letter of His Holiness, Pope Francis to President Obama. We need to renew a lively awareness of God's passion for humanity and its world. Human beings were made by God in His image, male and female, as spiritual and sentient, conscious and free. Overstanding the commercial scheme being operated against every man, woman, and child today in this country for the sole purpose to allow the government corporations to survive and continue to serve themselves under a socialistic bankrupt democracy. This powerful letter sent via attorney on July 4, 2014, issued as in civil order. Issued to all members of the domestic police forces, U.S. Marshal Service, the Provost Marshal, members of the American Bar Association, and the American Armed Services. Today, the U.S. Marshal Service is the enforcement arm of the federal courts and is involved in virtually every federal law enforcement initiative. We hold the oldest law enforcement authority of this country, and that's put us at the forefront of our nation's major events. A Provost Marshal is a military officer who leads a group of military police and is responsible for maintaining order and law enforcement within a command. The term Provost Marshal comes from the Old French word prévost, which was an older term for military police. The Provost Marshal General is the highest-ranking Provost Marshal in the United States Army and is the chief law enforcement authority for the Department of the Army. The Provost Marshal General is responsible for investigating U.S. Army personnel and brings all aspects of law enforcement in the U.S. Army together in one office. The Provost Marshal General reports to the Chief of Staff of the United States Army. The role of the Provost Marshal General has been active on and off since 1776, usually during wartime. The first Provost Marshal General was Captain William Maroney, appointed by General George Washington on January 10, 1776. The role was shut down after the Vietnam War in 1974, but was reactivated on January 30, 2003, after the September 11 attacks. The current Provost Marshal General is Brigadier General Sarah K. Albrecht, who has held the position since June 18, 2024. The American Bar Association, ABA, is a voluntary bar association of lawyers and law students. It is not specific to any jurisdiction in the United States. Founded in 1878, the ABA's stated activities are the setting of academic standards for law schools and the formulation of model ethical codes related to the legal profession. The United States Armed Forces are made up of 6 branches: the Army, Marine Corps, Navy, Air Force, Space Force, and Coast Guard. These branches are part of the Department of Defense, which is responsible for protecting the country's security and deterring war. These organic American states of the Union, known as the United States of America, marker exercising plenary civil power upon the land, hereby appoint General Carter F. Ham to lead and command the Grand Army of the Republic Guard and its successors under guidance of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And with their full support, should it become necessary to suppress commercial mercenary forces operating under the guise of being federal government agencies, including but not limited to the Department of Homeland Security, the Federal Emergency Management Administration, Internal Revenue Service, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms, etc. General Ham shall assume immediate command and control of all armed forces and services owed to the United States of America, major station in North America, and shall join them under his command as the Grand Army of the Republic. What is an organic American state? In the United States, an organic act is a law passed by Congress that establishes a territory or agency. Organic acts can also define how a territory is governed or how a federal agency manages certain lands. The Organic Act of 1872 established the National Park Service and directed it to promote and regulate the use of national parks, monuments, and reservations. An organic law that established the Northwest Territory. An organic law that established the Articles of Confederation. An organic law that established the Declaration of Independence. An organic law that established the U.S. Constitution. Organic acts are a type of enabling statute, which is a law that creates new powers or permits what was previously prohibited. Congress delegates rulemaking authority to executive agencies, departments, and commissions through organic and enabling statutes. In United States law, an organic act is an act of the United States Congress that establishes a territory of the United States and specifies how it is to be governed, or an agency to manage certain federal lands. In the absence of an organic law, a territory is classified as unorganized. Plenary power is the absolute authority given to a governing body or individual to make decisions and exercise control over a specific area without limitations. It's often used to describe the power of Congress over interstate commerce as granted by the Commerce Clause. No limitations. Plenary power is absolute and without limitations. Plenary powers are not subject to judicial review. When a body is granted plenary power, other bodies are not allowed to exercise that power. There are few clear examples of plenary power in the U.S. because the Constitution gives different roles to the three branches of government and the states. The plenary power doctrine has been used to justify the U.S. military's involvement in Syria and the bombing of Afghanistan in 2001. The doctrine has allowed the legislature to overlook rights and liberties in the name of national security. Plenary power refers to the complete or absolute authority granted to a governing body over a specific area without limitations, enabling them to exercise significant control and discretion over relevant matters. This term is frequently used to describe the commerce power of Congress. A commercial mercenary is a professional soldier who is motivated by money and is willing to fight for any cause, regardless of their own personal beliefs, politics, or patriotism. They are also known as soldiers of fortune. Mercenaries have been used throughout history, including by the Greeks in the Persian army and the French Foreign Legion. In the 21st century, private military companies, PMCs like Blackwater, have been described as mercenaries. PMCs are often used by the U.S. government to support operations in dangerous areas. More recently, the term corporate mercenary has been used to describe a new breed of mercenaries that offer a range of services, including security, military combat, humanitarian work, and more. These companies are registered in one country but often work in others, employing both local and foreign personnel. The legality of mercenaries has been questioned by many, and the concept has been controversial. A mercenary is a private individual who joins an armed conflict for personal profit, is otherwise an outsider to the conflict, and is not a member of any other official military. Mercenaries fight for money or other forms of payment rather than for political interests. Federal agencies are government organizations that are part of the executive branch of the United States government and are responsible for carrying out and enforcing laws. Federal agencies are created to serve a specific purpose, such as managing resources, overseeing industries financially, or addressing national security issues. Federal agencies are usually established by legislative action, but can also be created by presidential order. Some examples of federal agencies include the Central Intelligence Agency, the Federal Trade Commission, and the Social Security Administration. The federal government also has several departments, including the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Commerce, the Department of Defense, and the Department of Education. This annual publication provides an overview of the executive branch of the government, including descriptions of federal agencies and their activities. A group of men who wish to remain anonymous, through their agents, employees of United States Inc. and their subcorporations, began, under the Lincoln administration, to quietly hijack the Constitution and the three branches of the constitutional republic. A quasi-governmental corporate takeover was then engineered to take control of the 50 states, the banking system, and the coining and printing of money. A civil war, a bankruptcy, and the confiscation of the wealth of the nation were sponsored in order to create a context, read emergency, for the enslavement of the formerly sovereign people of the 50 formerly sovereign states under color of law. The icing on the cake. In 1938, the rulings of the Supreme Court were then partitioned to prevent the invocation of any law based on the common law, to be replaced by the Uniform Commercial Code and Courts of International Contract Law, Admiralty. The coup d'etat is that most of you don't even realize that you have personally aided and abetted by your own ignorance of history and the law, signed and acted yourself into this system of commercial slavery. You do this every time you get a job, get married, give birth, register your car, take out a mortgage, use Federal Reserve notes, or join the military. Welcome to the same old world order. We have seen the enemy, and the enemy is the U.S. corporation. If you think you are a landowner in America, take a close look at the warranty deed or fee title to your land. You will almost always find the words tenant or tenancy. The title or deed document establishing your right as a tenant, not a landowner, has been prepared for transfer by a licensed bar attorney, just as it was carried out within the original English feudal system that you may have presumed yourself to have escaped from in 1776. If your goal is to recover what has been stolen from you, it will be necessary to redeem yourself from living a life of false perceptions. Real freedom is the path of waging peace with your adversary. It is the path of turning the fraud that has been perpetrated on you to your advantage, so that you can control your property and prevail in any venue involving agencies and employees of the state and federal government. This video offers you the opportunity to move from the ranks of debtor-slave on the plantation to the elevated status to a freeborn. The Grand Army of the Republic, JR, was a veterans organization of Union soldiers who served in the American Civil War. Founded in 1866 by Union Army surgeon Benjamin Franklin Stevenson, the GAR was the first veterans group in the United States. Membership was limited to honorably discharged veterans of the Union Army, Navy, Marine Corps, or the Revenue Cutter Service. The GAR was active in many areas, including veterans' homes. The GAR founded veterans' homes; relief work. The GAR provided relief for widows and orphans; pension legislation. The GAR lobbied for pension legislation; politics. The GAR was active in state and national politics, and helped elect several Republican presidents, including Ulysses S. Grant, Rutherford B. Hayes, James A. Garfield, Benjamin Harrison, and William McKinley. The GR's membership structure changed over time, beginning with a military system similar to a Union Army encampment and later transitioning to a fraternal order similar to the Masonic lodges. All forces of air, land, and sea are to be employed. Any cost or loss suffered as a result of deployment of the Grand Army of the Republic shall be charged as stipulated prior. All efforts shall be made by the Grand Army of the Republic to spare life and property while undertaking any action whatsoever within the states of the Union, without exception. The Grand Army of the Republic Guard is uniquely enabled by these orders to operate on the land of the 50 organic states for the purposes of securing the lives and property of the American states and American state citizens. The Guard is not a foreign army and is composed primarily of American state citizens. If required to take field position, the local commanders shall make every effort to communicate the basis of their authority and the reasons for their presence on American state soil to ensure a prompt cessation of hostilities and a widespread understanding of usurpations and acts of fraud which have led to any conflict. A republic is a form of government where the people hold the power but elect representatives to exercise it. Republics are ruled by a constitution or charter that limits the government's power, often to protect individual rights. The United States is a constitutional federal republic, meaning it is based on a constitution and has both a national government and state governments. Here are some characteristics of a republic. Representative government. The people elect representatives to exercise their power. Limited government. The constitution or charter limits the government's power. Chief of state. The chief of state is not a monarch, and in modern times is usually a president. Sovereignty. The people are considered to be sovereign. The term republic comes from the Latin phrase res publica, which means the public thing. Before the 17th century, the term was used to describe any state, except for tyrannical regimes. A foreign army is a military service that includes a volunteer corps of foreign citizens. Some countries recruit foreign applicants to join their armed forces, and these applicants may not need to be legal residents of that country. A mercenary is a soldier who is paid to fight for a country or group that they are not a member of. Some countries have overseas military bases, which can be established for strategic reasons. The United States, Turkey, the United Kingdom, Russia, and France have a significant number of overseas military bases. A volunteer corps is a group of people who volunteer to serve a community, and the term can refer to many different organizations. Foreign occupation is when a foreign military takes control of a territory outside of its own borders. The territory is then called occupied territory, and the foreign military is called the occupant. Here are some key points about foreign occupation. A territory is considered occupied when a hostile military has effective control over it. This definition is based on Article 42 of the Hague Regulations of 1907, Rights and Obligations. The occupying power has rights and obligations, including restoring and maintaining law and order, and respecting the laws in force. Occupation is intended to be temporary, which distinguishes it from colonialism and annexation. A foreign power can also exercise indirect control over a territory, such as by controlling local authorities. The law of occupation aims to ensure that the occupying power respects the rights of the local population, the absent sovereign, and their right to self-determination. Military occupation, also called belligerent occupation or simply occupation, is temporary hostile control exerted by a ruling power's military apparatus over a sovereign territory that is outside of the legal boundaries of that ruling power's own sovereign territory. The controlled territory is called occupied territory, and the ruling power is called the occupant. Occupation's intended temporary nature distinguishes it from annexation and colonialism. The occupant often establishes military rule to facilitate administration of the occupied territory, though this is not a necessary characteristic of occupation. Americans have intimate, first-hand knowledge of the heartless mechanics of the laws of commerce, religiously applied by the example of the unregistered foreign agents of the Internal Revenue Services. The IRS, accounting firm and collection agency for the private Federal Reserve Bank, was constituted under the UCC at its inception in 1954 and has been operating strictly in that realm ever since. Why the bankers and the lawyers working for the foreign principals, the private Federal Reserve constituting the 20 Class A stockholders, being mostly private bankers, all orchestrated and greased by politicians then and still today. Only because it is not the mindset of politicians today to correct the matter and put full and absolute power over the control, creation, minting and putting into circulation of United States money backed by gold, substance, value. There is a war going on out there. There has always been a war going on out there. The object of war is to restore honor to commercial dealings between foreign entities so there can be a lasting peace. But where there is no honor, there can be no peace. The rules of occupation are delineated in various international agreements, primarily the Hague Convention of 1907, the Geneva Conventions, and also by long-established state practice. The relevant international conventions, the International Committee of the Red Cross, and various treaties by military scholars provide guidelines on topics concerning the rights and duties of the occupying power, the protection of civilians, the treatment of prisoners of war, the coordination of relief efforts, the issuance of travel documents, the property rights of the populace, the handling of cultural and art objects, the management of refugees, and other concerns that are highest in importance both before and after the cessation of hostilities during an armed conflict. A country that engages in a military occupation and violates internationally agreed-upon norms runs the risk of censure, criticism, or condemnation. In the contemporary era, the practices of occupations have largely become a part of customary international law and form a part of the law of war. The ownership of a property is in the state. Individual so-called ownership is only by virtue of government, that is, law amounting to mere user, and use must be in accordance with law and subordinate to the necessities of the state. Repeated in Hearing Before a Subcommittee of the Committee on Foreign Relations, February 17, 1950 p.494, Constitution for the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, Treaty Document 97-19, and the Communist Manifesto. In 1871, the default again loomed, and bankruptcy was imminent. So in 1871, the assumed 10 miles square was incorporated in England. The new military social construct of the United States was still operating under the old familiar known social compacts agency name as the United States and Congress Assembled, which used the Constitution as their bylaws, not as authority under the Constitution, but as authority over the Constitution. They copyrighted not only the Constitution but also many names such as the United States, U.S., the United States of America, USA, and many other titles as their own intellectual property, and secured such property rights by copyright. This is the final blow to the original Constitution as applicable to the trust operating under the U.S. Constitution for the beneficiaries of the original signatories of the social compact created for their benefit by their forefathers. From here on out, the United States was governed entirely by foreign to the law established by the social compact, private corporate law, dictated by the bankers as fiscal agents for the private creditors of the intellectual property, which they now held in, and under copyright with the creditors extending the right to use such copyright to their esquires by and through the Crown's British Accreditation Registry, bar international agents, attorneys, in association with the Vatican by treaty as the exchequer of the Vatican Treasury.